Worthy, amen. I would like to recite for you a speech by Dr. Martin Luther King entitled, "I've Been to the Mountaintop." The reason I enjoy reciting this speech is because, for one, when I was around 10 years old, my grandmother taught me this speech, and I pray that you'll share it with your children and grandchildren, because it chronicles the sacrifices and achievements of the civil rights movement. And many of the privileges that we enjoy today are because our mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers put their lives on the line so that we can enjoy some of what you may feel are simple pleasures. But know that people died in order for us to have them. In fact, right now, there's a movement out there trying to take away one of our rights, and that's our right to vote. The Tea Party members and Republican Party members are trying to block the right to vote. Ever since we made history by voting Barack Obama as the first African-American president, these people have been adamant about trying to stop the vote. So let's keep Dr. King's dream alive and continue to rise up so that we don't fall back into the trap that we were once in, that we freed ourselves from. Amen. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you. You know, several years ago, I was in New York City autographing the first book that I had written. And while sitting there autographing books, a demented black woman came up. The only question I heard from her was, "Are you Martin Luther King?" And I was looking down writing and I said, "Yes." The next minute I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon, and the blade had gone through, and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you're drowned in your own blood. That's the end of you. It came out the next morning in the New York Times that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, around 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation and after my chest had been opened and the blade had been removed, to move around in the wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that had come in, and from all over the states and all over the world, kind letters came in. I read a few of them, but there's one that I'll never forget. You see, I received one from the president and the vice president, but I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I received a letter and a visit from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter. It came from a little girl, a young girl who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter and I'll never forget it. It said, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School. While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read the other day of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. And I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. And I want to say tonight that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. Because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students from all over the South began sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best of the American dream and taking this whole nation back to the great wells of democracy, which were dug deep by the founding fathers of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1963 when the black people of Birmingham, Alabama aroused the consciousness of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around in 1962 in Albany, Georgia, when black folks decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around later on that year in August to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around the brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. And they were telling me, doesn't matter now. Doesn't matter what happens now. We left Atlanta this morning. On the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilot said over the public address system, we are sorry for the delay, but we have the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane. And to be sure that all the bags were checked, and to be sure that nothing went wrong on the plane, we've had everything checked out carefully. And we've had the plane protected and guarded all night. And then I got into Memphis. And some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out, or what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really don't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that right now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I looked over and I seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.